Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for attending, especially on this lovely warm evening. Before I introduce our guest speaker, Eduardo, could I just ask, I don't think anybody can be heard, but if you can mute, please do. And also to let you know that there'll be a questions and answer session at the end. So if you'd like to put your questions into the chat box, then I'll present them to Eduardo then. Well, anyway, I'm delighted to introduce Eduardo, who is the founder and director of the campaign to ban trophy hunting. I'll tell a little bit about his background, which is absolutely fascinating. After leaving university, he produced and presented the first ever dedicated environmental news slot to be broadcast on UK commercial radio before working as a journalist with some of Britain's leading titles, including the Sunday Times, the Guardian and the Observer. And he was approached by various newspapers after a stint at CND, where he was the organisation's official spokesperson, and he also investigated and exposed some of the most startling revelations about the nuclear age. Eduardo spent several years with WWF, working first on forest conservation and then on sustainability. He's an expert on cork forests and owns and manages a small cork woodland in Portugal. He coordinated WWF International's One Planet Living initiative and is author of the WWF Pocketbook for One Planet Living and helped develop the first global footprint calculator for consumers. Eduardo was a director of Abu Dhabi's Environment Agency and led the UAE government's new 7 Wonders of Nature bid. And despite strong competition from the Amazon, the Great Barrier Reef, Kilimanjaro and 400 other contenders, the bid came runner-up to the Amazon and won the award for the best campaign. Eduardo set up SOS Links, a successful campaign group launched to stop the extinction of the Iberian lynx. The animal, which is Europe's only endemic big cat, is the world's most endangered feline. Its population crashed to less than 100 in the year 2000, of which only 28 were breeding age females. And it seemed destined to be the first extinction of a big cat on Earth since the saber-toothed tiger disappeared in prehistoric times. SOS Links campaigned tirelessly for national and international authorities to support an emergency breeding programme. Since then, hundreds of Iberian lynxes have been reintroduced back into the wild, and the species is no longer classed as critically endangered. Eduardo co-wrote The Algarve Tiger, the first book ever written about the Iberian lynx, which tells a dramatic story of its plight and what needs to happen for it to survive in the long run. Eduardo has been the CEO of the League Against Cruel Sports, where he led the successful campaign to stop plans to bring back fox hunting. He is co-author of The Fox, the Hound and the Human, which tells the story of ongoing illegal fox cub hunting in Britain and how as many as 10,000 fox cubs and 3,000 hounds are killed each year by hunts in the UK. He also helped persuade the government to increase jail sentences for dogfighting after leading a major undercover investigation, which revealed how criminal gangs across Europe were breeding and shipping dogs into the UK for organised fights with prizes of up to £50,000. In the run-up to the Paris Climate Summit, Eduardo was International Communications Director at the Climate Group, an influential organisation set up with the support of the then Prime Minister Tony Blair, as well as business and political leaders from around the world. The Climate Group's campaign led to the organisation being deemed one of the most influential players in the climate negotiations. Its work with partners brought together a mass coalition of over 1 million businesses and state and regional governments in support of the ambitious deal that was eventually agreed by world leaders. Today, Eduardo has made trophy hunting probably the biggest animal welfare and conservation issue in Britain. The campaign to ban trophy hunting's investigations have exposed how some of the world's most endangered species are being cruelly killed for fun in their thousands. He has brought together leading politicians of all political persuasions in support of a ban to import trophy imports into the UK. The campaign is backed by national newspapers such as the Daily Mirror and the Times, and some of the country's best known public figures, conservation groups around the world, and church and business leaders. Every single national political party included a ban on trophy imports in their 2019 general election manifestos. A ban was announced in the 2019 Queen's speech. And the government held a public consultation on ban proposals, which finished in February 2020. And the campaign has been backed by many international figures. Eduardo is currently leading an international campaign to close a loophole in CITES wildlife trade laws, which controversially allow trophy hunters to shoot critically endangered animals. The campaign is supported by dozens of conservation groups, as well as members of the European Parliament across the EU and political parties. He's also working with wildlife and animal welfare groups across Europe to ban hunting trophy imports throughout the EU, and is assembling a group of lawyers and senior politicians to push for an international treaty banning all trophy hunting around the world. So I think we can agree that Edward is a pretty impressive person to be leading this campaign, and I'm absolutely delighted to have him here tonight to talk to you and give us the latest information and explain what we can do to help. Thank you. And I will now pass over to our new patron, and the Animal Interfaith Alliance's new patron, Peter Egan, who is a great supporter of Eduardo's work, for some support.
Hi, hello. I'm delighted to be here tonight to hear Eduardo speak. I'm a huge admirer of him and his work. I've worked with him during his period as CEO of the League Against Cruel Sports. It was a wonderful period of time when I think the League was possibly at its most powerful in the UK. And since then, I've been delighted to be both a patron and a trustee for the campaign to ban trophy hunting. I think, as you've said earlier, that Eduardo has really brought this into the forefront of all the animal causes that are so important in our world. I find it shocking that we are here today without a ban on the import of trophy hunting body parts. It's as if our government are supporting psychopaths and not the will of the UK, which is to have a ban. And as I understand it, and I'm sure Eduardo will verify this, I think it is also the desire of about 80% of the Conservative Party itself. So I'm just delighted to be here, and I pledge my total support to Eduardo and the great work he's doing.
Well, thank you both for those very generous introductions, and thank you very much to the Animal Interfaith Alliance for organising this, giving me this opportunity, and of course to everyone who's joining. Particularly, yes, I quite enjoyed that journey down memory lane that you gave me, Barbara. It just makes me feel quite old. But look, let's start then, and I'm just going to actually bring up my screen because I'm going to talk you through what I think are the main issues. I'll try to give you as comprehensive a overview of the issue, and I'll try and do it in quite a compressed fashion, and then we'll have some time to talk about it and ask me questions and so on. So let's start right at the very beginning. You probably remember this chap, don't you? This is Walter Palmer, who was that American dentist who shot Cecil the lion. And this is what we think of, remember, when we talk about trophy hunting. And there is this general perception, which I'm going to try and challenge a little bit. It's a perception that, this doesn't happen very often. It's one or two people who are, a bunch of idiots, but, there's just one or two of them out there. What they do is illegal. They're mostly Americans. It only happens every now and again. We think that poaching actually is the real big problem. Trophy hunting is, minor by comparison. And I'm going to say that all of that is pretty wrong. Okay, so trophy hunting is an industry. It is a huge and powerful industry. It is rich. It's part of the gun lobby. It's right at the heart of the gun lobby. It is the gun lobby, and it has, you know, a hold on the American political system, and it's directly manipulating the British political system too. The numbers of animals that are killed, though, are absolutely enormous, and this is directly contributing to the extinction emergency that we face today. You know, it is already been responsible for some species extinctions. It could be responsible for some more to come. And it is horrendously cruel, which is something we don't often talk about. The animals that are shot by trophy hunters are, you know, suffer terribly. So let's just start with some numbers. I'll take you through this by talking some numbers. So 125. The trophy hunting industry has prizes that it gives to hunters who shoot lots and lots and lots of animals. So, for example, one organization, Safari Club International, which I'm going to talk about, it has an award called the Hunting Achievement Award Diamond. To get that prize, you have to shoot species, or rather, you have to shoot animals from at least 125 different species. So not just 125 animals, animals from at least 125 different species. 395. After we've done this talk, you can go online and type in bookyourhunt.com. It's a website. It's like going on Tesco and Amazon, where you can, you know, click to collect. Well, here you can go and click and kill. You can literally find pretty much any animal that you want to shoot. So there's 395 species on offer at the moment, about 5,000 different hunts on offer at any one time. And it's got everything on there. I mean, it's got lions, it's got giraffes, it's got elephants, but it's also got things like camels. It's got beavers, wallabies, seals, otters, squirrels, you name it. If you want to shoot it, you can find it online. 5,930. That's the number of animals shot by just one man. It's called Ron Thompson. 5,000 of those were elephants. He's also shot lots of other creatures as well. 350,000 is the number of endangered animals that are thought to have been shot by trophy hunters over the past decade alone. That doesn't count other species as a whole. So 200,000, that's the number of entries in the record book of just one of the trophy hunting industry groups. So they have this kind of record book. It's like the Guinness Book of World Records. And so it basically encourages trophy hunters to shoot the biggest animals. And of course, that's a problem because it's then taking the best genes out of the gene pool. Anyway, there's 200,000 entries of animals, dead animals, in that book, including some of species that are now extinct in the wild. 1.7 million is the total number of animals that it's thought that have been shot by trophy hunters over the past decade. So that works out at about an animal every 3 minutes. 20 million is the number of animals that are thought to have been shot by trophy hunters during the 19th century. So this is when the British first arrived in Africa, and when they started plundering and shooting lions and elephants and leopards, and there was a bit of a free-for-all. So they shot 20 million then. But if things continue as they are now, by the end of this century, trophy hunters will have shot 170 million animals. Except they probably won't, because quite a few of them will have gone extinct in that time. So what are the animals that British hunters like to shoot? And I say this because I want to, challenge this idea. It's just Americans who do this. It's the British as well. So elephants are by far and away the most popular animal shot by British trophy hunters. And it's about 1 in 5 of the trophies of endangered animals that are shot by trophy hunters are elephants. Next, it's hippos, but we also like, or British trophy hunters like black bears, they like leopards, they like zebras, they like lions. Most of the lions now that are shot by British trophy hunters have actually been bred in a cage and shot in an enclosure. And then you have baboons. In fact, British trophy hunters like to shoot a lot of primates, which is extraordinary. And just to give you an idea, the number of trophies coming into Britain is growing up. So if we look at the 1980s, so this is when CITES was starting to be implemented. So that's the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. Supposedly there to stop or restrict and strictly regulate the flow of animal body parts around the world. Well, actually, it's got this little loophole which says, if you're a trophy hunter, it's okay. But anyway, the number of trophies that have been coming into Britain over each decade have been going up. So you can see it's quite small in the 80s, then it goes up in the 90s. Then there's a big jump in the first decade of the new millennium, and it keeps going up. And again, just to really get across that British trophy hunters are shooting these animals. On the left, we've got Ian Evans, I think he is, and he is a Scottish farmer. And on the right, we've got James Jordan, who's shooting a hippo there. Next on the left, this is a black bear that was shot by a British trophy hunter. This is in a studio in Dorchester. So Britain also has some of the best taxidermists that are used by trophy hunters in the world. So this particular studio in Dorchester, it does everything. It does bears, it does lions, it does hippos, it does leopards. On the right, we've got Carl Knight. So he's a British guy from Surrey. He's been on about 400 big game hunts. He also owns and runs a company that sells and organizes trophy hunting holidays in 3 Southern African countries. Here we've got Trisha Boddington. So yes, there are female British trophy hunters. In fact, there's another British woman, she's called Abigail Day. She's actually been voted the best female trophy hunter in the world. So we've got some of the so-called best trophy hunters here in Britain. This is a chap called Manish Gelabai. He's a gas engineer from Norfolk. He actually bragged about shooting this captive bred and essentially tame lion from a distance of about 8 yards. And that's probably because the lion thought, well, he's just coming to feed me. He was used to humans, so he was able to go right up to it and then just shoot it. This is Michael Jordan, not to be confused with the basketball player. So we've got a monkey, a vervet monkey there, and a Shakma baboon. So there's I think 9 different species of primate that British hunters like to shoot. I mean, these are animals that we share 90% of our DNA with. This is Rodney Fuller. He's a farmer from Surrey, and with a caracal cat. So it's a medium-sized cat. It's very similar to the lynxes that we get in Europe and in North America. In fact, they often call it the African lynx in Africa. And it's one of the 10 most popular animals shot by British trophy hunters. They like to shoot caracals. I went undercover for about a year, and I spent a long time talking to and corresponding with British trophy hunters, and they would say some of the most extraordinary things. And these are just some of the actual quotes of things that they said to me. But they also often talked about the horrendous injuries that they inflicted on animals, about blood coming out of the lungs or intestines hanging off the bushes, and the pain and suffering that the animals went through. And I've deliberately not included this in this presentation, but they are in my book, Undercover Trophy Hunter. I can give you the details at the end. And as I mentioned previously, we do have British companies that are literally making a killing from this industry, from this so-called sport. So Take Aim Safaris, this is a British-owned company. These are just some of the fees of the animals that it has on offer. So you can go and shoot wildcats with them, baboons, caracals, elephants, giraffes, hippos, leopards, lions, rhinos. We know that rhinos are highly endangered. If you want to shoot it, here's a company that will do it. But he's not alone. These are just some of the satisfied customers of Take Aim Safari. So you can see somebody's shot a lion, a leopard, and an elephant. And yeah, we've got several companies in this country. So this is Blackthorn Safaris. They're based in Oswestry in Shropshire. In fact, the chap who owns it, called Alex Goss, he's down in the bottom left-hand corner with the lion there. We also have Robin Hurt Safaris. Now, Robin Hurt Safaris is one of the biggest trophy hunting companies in the world. It's got loads and loads of records in the industry's record books. It's got world records for shooting some animals with revolvers. And when I went undercover, they actually offered me a cheetah to shoot, and also some leopards. And Robin Hurt, who set up and runs this company, he's also one of the world's leading trophy hunters. So that quote is actually from a book that's about him and his trophy hunting exploits. So let's then take a sort of step back. So this is an industry, who's behind it? Who are the players, the drivers? And we'll talk about some of the money as well. So there's quite a few organizations. The NRA actually is very involved in trophy hunting. It offers awards. It trains children. It has these children's youth camps where they train them to become and excite them about becoming trophy hunters. But the big guys an organization that most of you won't have heard of. It's called Safari Club International, SCI for short. Now, they're based in Washington, D.C. They have a UK branch. It's run by the former UKIP mayor for Beaconsfield in Buckinghamshire. And it represents tens of thousands of trophy hunters from all over the world. It has a legal department, which is constantly taking governments to court to challenge laws which protect wildlife and their habitats, or which put restrictions on trophy hunters bringing home the body parts of the endangered animals they've shot. It puts money into campaigns, election campaigns of pro-gun politicians to help them get elected and defend their interests. It funds friendly scientists and then promotes them so that they're the kind of the voice and the face of the campaign, gives them platforms. It also funds dirty tricks campaigns, which I'm going to come on to a bit later. It spends somewhere around £11 million a year just on lobbying. And so where does that money come from? Well, some of that money comes from gun groups like the NRA. It also comes from the gun manufacturers. So Beretta, for example, they make guns. Hornady, they make bullets. They also get quite a lot of money from the oil industry. And in fact, so companies like Shell, Chevron, Halliburton, and others. So there's actually a strategic alliance between the oil industry and the trophy hunting industry. That's the words of an SCI document, by the way. And that's because they have a shared interest in opening up the areas that are currently protected for endangered wildlife, because, well, the hunters want to go in and shoot the animals. The oil industry wants to go in there and open those areas up for oil exploration. And Safari Club International has one of the biggest election funds of any corporate group in America. So the amount of money that it puts into the campaign coffers of politicians at election time is much bigger than companies like Delta or American Express or General Motors. It is one of the really big players. And it also has these different funds. So for example, it's got this one fund that's called the Hunter Legacy 100 Fund. That was set up by 100 rich members who each put at least $100,000 into the pot, and then they've got lots and lots more rich hunters to join in. It's also got something called the Society of the Lion and the Shield, and it's got these different levels of donor, and so it's got lots of people who've been given either $1 million or $500,000 or $250,000, etc., etc. And some of the people who've put money are very influential. So one of them is a guy called Steve Chancellor. He's a major donor and fundraiser for Donald Trump. He's actually broken the world record for the largest lion known to man shot by a trophy hunter. The industry also makes a lot of money from its conventions. So these are like trade fairs. It's a bit like going to the Ideal Homes exhibition or any conventional trade fair, except you've got up to 1,000 companies there that are selling trophy hunting holidays, a chance to go and shoot lots of animals. And they often sell them as packages, so father and son hunts or hunts for all the family, and all sorts of different animals thrown in as part of a package deal. And you also get the big taxidermists there who and the companies that make jewelry and furniture from animal body parts. They all come and display, and SCI gets a lot of money from that. One of the things that they do at the annual convention is hold these auctions every evening. And they literally sell off animals to be shot in order to raise money for the organization. So the hunts are donated by the companies, and the SCI then it auctions them off, and that money goes into their campaign pot. So this is an example actually from this year's auction catalogue. It's one of 122 lots. It's for a polar bear. So they sold this particular polar bear for $65,000, and that money has gone into the campaign coffers to help trying to block the proposed British ban on trophy imports, which is something the industry is really worried about at the moment. Now, another major source of funding for the industry are its awards programs. So this is the Hunting Achievement Award, which I briefly mentioned before. So when you want to get into the awards books, the roll call of honor of the industry, and you can put your name in for these awards, but you have to pay to be registered, you have to pay to put your entry fee in, and then when you get the award, you've actually got to pay for the thing itself, and it can cost up to $3,000, these things. So and the awards, of course, they have this almost ecocidal impact, because a lot of them are a bit like old-fashioned Space Invaders games, where you used to sort of have to shoot 10 aliens to get through level 1, get to level 2, and then shoot another 20 aliens to get through level 2 onto level 3. That's the way they work. So this has got 5 levels. So level 1, copper, you have to shoot animals from at least 10 different species. Then you get onto the bronze. And then to get onto bronze, you have to shoot 30 different species. Silver, 70, gold, 100, and then the top award, you have to shoot animals from at least 125 different species. They also have awards that effectively encourage cruelty. So this is the multiple methods award. This is where you have to shoot at least 24 different animals, but using at least 4 different methods. And they've got 6 that you can choose from. You've got old-fashioned muzzle-loader rifles, which is what they used in the American Civil War. You've got handguns, so revolvers, pistols, a bow and arrow, old, traditional rifle, crossbow, or a shotgun. And of course, it's really, really difficult to shoot an elephant or a giraffe with a handgun, with a revolver. They've got very thick skins. What it does cause is a very, very slow, protracted, and painful death for a lot of these animals. This is just one of the other awards. So they have some awards which are based geographically. So the Animals of Africa Award, to get the top prize, you have to shoot at least 80 different species from Africa. And that includes at least 2 of the big cats, 2 of the small cats, a hyena, a rhino, an elephant, and then some hippos and antelopes, and so on and so on and so forth. And then you have, if you like, groups of animals as well. So you've got the bears of the world. You've got to shoot at least 5 different bears from this menu. And you can choose. There's polar bears, you can do grizzly bears, you can do Eurasian bears. Same with the cats of the world. You've got to shoot at least 4 of them. And you've got a whole choice here. You can do lions, leopards, cheetahs, wildcats, lynxes, cougars, golden cats, etc. And then, of course, you get to pick up the awards, which you have to pay for. And so, for example, the one on the left, I think it's called the Crowning, that's right, it's the Crowning Achievement Award. And it's like a cumulative one. So they have several cumulative prizes that you get for getting lots of other prizes. So to get this one, you basically will have had to shoot at least 156 different animals. Then the one in the middle, it's one of the Inner Circle Awards. They've got a number of these that have these quite Masonic names, so things like the Zenith Award, the 4th Pinnacle of Achievement. And then on the right, this is the award for doing the African Big 5. So you have to shoot at least 1 lion, 1 elephant, a rhino, a leopard, and a buffalo. And about 800 SCI members alone have won just that one prize. And in fact, when you go through the awards system and try to tot up the number of animals that are killed, the numbers are quite mind-boggling. So basically about 100 Safari Club International members have between them shot over 100,000 animals. That's the sort of scale of the slaughter that we're talking about. And they're doing it for the vanity. They're doing it, because they want to look big. And, and this is one of the reasons why trophy hunting is driving species to extinction. It has already driven some species to extinction. So if we go look at the top line here from left to right. So the left, you've got the quagga. The quagga, the last one in the wild, was actually shot by a member of the British royal family at the end of the 19th century in this huge trophy hunt that went on. In the middle, you've got the Dorcas gazelle, and a 2016 US Congress report saying that that trophy hunters had driven the Dorcas gazelle to local extinctions. In the top right, you've got the Arabian oryx. The last one in the wild was shot by a trophy hunter in 1982 in Oman. However, there were some that were in zoos. So they actually got together, the government of the United Arab Emirates got together, created a breeding program, and then started reintroducing them back into the wild. So as of 2019, you can now go back to Abu Dhabi and start shooting the Arabian oryx again. Bottom left, we've got the blue bok, again, another animal that's thought to have been shot to extinction by British trophy hunters at the end of the 19th century. Got the Nubian bustard. This is a species that, again, the US Congress reckons that trophy hunters have helped to drive to local extinction. And then bottom right, you've got the scimitar horned oryx. So this is another Saharan oryx. And the last one was shot in the wild sometime around the 1970s. You can tell it's about them because the Safari Club International Records book, it's got all the details of British and other trophy hunters shooting them, and then suddenly it stops. That's because they've run out. They're no longer there. They're all shot out of existence. And so many species are in such trouble. This terrifying looking graph shows the trend of population of the lion. So starting at the left, 1800, so this is roughly when the British arrived in Africa and started shooting lions. There's about 1.2 million lions on the African continent, it's estimated. By 1950, just after the Second World War, that had come right down to about 450,000. And then just 20 years later, it's down to 200,000. But today, well, the estimates are, some people say 20,000, some people say 10,000, some say 15,000. I've gone for the middle figure here. So since 1970, in the last 50 years alone, the population of lions in Africa has gone down from 200,000 to about 15,000. That is an absolutely calamitous collapse, almost unrivaled by any other species on Earth. But it's not just the lions that are in trouble. Look, cheetahs, there's only 6,674 cheetahs left on the planet. That's what the IUCN Red List tells us. The black rhino, there's only 3,142 of them left. Polar bears, well, they don't actually know how many, but it's estimated there's about 20,000. And we know that, of course, the polar bears are endangered because of climate change, and trophy hunting is making it worse. And yet it is legal, perfectly legal, for anyone to go and shoot any of these species for fun, for sport, for a selfie, for a souvenir, if you say that you are a trophy hunter. And of course, the traffickers, the wildlife traffickers, they've cottoned onto this. They're using the system to engage in their trade. So we see, for example, an awful lot of bears, mostly black bears, supposedly shot as trophies, but then you look at what the actual trophy is, it's a gallbladder. Well, no trophy hunter is going to put a gallbladder above the fireplace. This is all for the Far Eastern market. This is to go to China to make so-called traditional Chinese medicines. And you see this all the time. You see it with crocodile skins. You see it even with walrus penises. I mean, it is extraordinary. They're using the law of trophy hunting to get away, well, with murder. Leopards, again, they're in really serious trouble. And what's happening with a lot of species is that they're getting more endangered more quickly. So 20 years ago, leopards were what was classed as least concern on the IUCN Red List. Since then, in just 20 years, it's jumped 2 levels on the IUCN Red List. It's now called vulnerable to extinction. With giraffes, it's even faster. They were classed as least concern just 10 years ago. And of the 9 different subspecies of giraffe, 2 of them are now classed as critically endangered, and another 2 are endangered. And again, numbers have come down very fast. But there's probably an even bigger problem than just the numbers, because numbers is one thing, but what trophy hunters do, of course, is they're shooting out the best animals. They're taking the best genes out of the system. So, when you want to shoot a trophy animal, you want the biggest, the best. So you can get it into Safari Club's record book, you can pick up those prizes, etc. And what we now see is even the trophy hunting industry's own data shows that the heads and bodies of lions that they're shooting is getting smaller. And scientists have shown actually that over the past century, the gene pool of lions in Africa has shrunk by 15%. And they're now telling us that even if trophy hunters take out just 5% of the remaining trophy males, the good males that are still left, that could be enough to push them past the point of no return. So before Barbara was talking about how the Iberian lynx could have been the first big cat to go extinct since the saber-toothed tiger, well, now it's increasingly looking like it might be the lion, but the lion could be the first big cat species to disappear from planet Earth since the saber-toothed tiger vanished in pre-biblical times. And it would have a catastrophic impact politically, but also environmentally, because it's an apex predator species. It manages its environment. So it would lead to widespread environmental degradation if this was the case. And we're seeing the same effects of artificial selection, of genetic deterioration happening with elephants as well. So what's happening there is you've got more and more elephants that have got much shorter tusks, and indeed many more adult elephants that have got no tusks whatsoever. Now, this is problematic, not just because it's an indicator of genetic deterioration, but also tusks serve a purpose. Elephants need long, strong tusks to find food, to find water, especially in Africa they do. And if they don't, well, it becomes problematic. And right now, of course, what's happening is we've got climate change, and we've got more and more droughts, and droughts are becoming more frequent, they're becoming more fierce, they're becoming more prolonged. And so elephants need those long, strong tusks to be able to find the sparse bit of water under the dry river beds in order to survive. And drought is now taking the lives of lots and lots more animals. And of course, climate change is accelerating, and the impacts are going to accelerate. And because of this, we're going to see elephants suffer more and more and be pushed further and further towards extinction. So I mentioned a little bit about how the industry has this money, it puts some of it into the political system, and it doesn't just go anywhere, it goes to the very, very top. So these are just some of the people who've received campaign contributions from Safari Club International. On the top left, we have the US Senate Majority Leader prior to Chuck Schumer. He's called Mitch McDonnell. He was a beneficiary of SCI money. On the right, we've got John Boehner. He was the US House of Representatives Speaker, so the head of the lower chamber in the US. Bottom left, you've got Sonny Perdue. He was the Agriculture Secretary. The Agriculture Secretary is in charge of hunting policy in the US. Next to him, you've got Ryan Zinke. He was the Interior Secretary. So he was the man who's in charge of trophy hunting permitting policy, if you like. When he had to resign in disgrace, the chap on his right, David Bernhardt, was appointed. David Bernhardt's job before he became Interior Secretary was he was a paid lobbyist for Safari Club International. So all of these people have been, the recipients of generous funding from Safari Club International. Safari Club International also puts a lot of money into the pockets of friendly scientists who can be counted upon to echo its views, because SCI doesn't want to be front and center, because people think, oh, hang on a sec, this is like the NRA, it's the gun lobby, we don't believe you. So they put people, they take a step back and they put other people in front. And so this particular scientist, this was a story in the Times, she's received donations and sponsorship money from Safari Club International, from Dallas Safari Club. We've got other pro-hunting campaign groups that are being supported by the industry, that are even taking money from the Russian trophy hunting industry, including one organization whose directors count the former right-hand man of Vladimir Putin as amongst its directors. And of course, Safari Club International funds dirty tricks campaigns. This is an actual slide from a presentation of theirs, a strategy document that was put together, and it shows what their strategy was. And over £1 million was pumped into this campaign. And it was a campaign that aimed, amongst other things, deliberately to deceive British government ministers and British MPs into thinking that Africans actually wanted British hunters to go out to Africa and shoot all of their animals, and that trophy hunting was really good for conservation, and they wanted them to shoot all their animals, and it was going to help poverty-stricken Africans. And they even have been pumping out the line that anyone who says that you should ban trophy hunting is a neo-colonialist, which is an extraordinary, almost Kafkaesque turning of things on its head, isn't it? Because trophy hunting was the sport of colonialism, and they're saying no. If you come and say, and this is what they actually said inside the document. It says, look, we're actually going to take SCI's propaganda and make it appear as if this is what Africans really think. And then they bombard, and they created this fake organization called Let Africa Live, supposedly an African organization campaigning for trophy hunting. And this so-called African organization then flooded social media with all of these memes and creating this, this completely false narrative. And they were bombarding it, and then they were creating these fake social media profiles that would then like and share all of this content to boost its profile. And they were using really sophisticated and expensive artificial intelligence technology, similar to that was used by Russian hackers when they were trying to influence elections in the West. And now you think, well, surely people are just going to see through that. But actually, some people are taken in for it. This was a story, I think, last week or the week before in The Guardian. Some people who really should know better have been taken in by this. So this is a story in The Guardian where it actually parrots the views that we now know have been created. They're completely myth by the trophy hunting industry, by its fake organizations, its front organizations. By the way, that T-shirt that Ricky Gervais is holding up there, I think it was Peter that gave it to him, and it is actually available from our website. It's one of our T-shirts. Now, at the same time, you've got those people who have had the courage to speak out or take action. They've been subjected to the most extraordinary threats of violence, of lawsuits. They've been attempts to discredit them. They've been kicked out of the country, had their research permits and funding withdrawn, etc., etc. So, for example, when a lion scientist in Tanzania, he exposed the corruption that was going on around trophy hunting, he was kicked out of the country and he was replaced by somebody from Safari Club International. The chap on the left here is having a cup of tea. He's Bertrand Chardonnay. He's a IUCN scientist. He has been the subject. I mean, he has spoken out against the industry. He has exposed how the trophy hunting industry has been successfully infiltrating IUCN, the global conservation body. For example, the IUCN Lion Working Group has got some of the world's top lion trophy hunters on it. They're not scientists, not people who've got academic qualifications. They're not biologists, conservationists. They're trophy hunters, and they're literally changing and manipulating decisions. And he has exposed some of this. And he's had his windows smashed. He's had all of these attempts to try and destroy his reputation. On the right, we've got the former Botswanan president, Ian Khama. Now, he had the courage to ban trophy hunting when he was head of state. And of course, local communities benefited because they got involved in phototourism, nature tourism, which brings in a lot more money to local people than trophy hunting. Well, since he stepped down, firstly, the industry worked very hard to persuade his successor to overturn the ban. And then he has actually been subject of attempts to poison him. He's had threats against his life. And indeed, they're actually trying to frame him at the moment for being a poacher, of all things. I mean, he was the guy who actually introduced anti-poaching patrols when he was head of the army. Now, we have to act. American scientists, government scientists are warning that the lion could go extinct in the wild as soon as 2050. And I'm very worried that it could be followed by a number of other species. Cheetahs are right on the brink. We know that rhinos on the brink, the Dharma gazelle, the addax, all of these are animals that have been very popular with trophy hunters. We've already faced this extinction emergency. Wildlife is under so many different pressures. This is one pressure that it doesn't need. This is one pressure we can take away. Some of the problems are quite complex, in terms of the habitat encroachment and needing to have greater areas to grow food for growing populations. These are complex, genuinely complex problems. But trophy hunting, nobody benefits from that. It's just the ego of somebody who shoots an animal for kicks. It's done simply for so-called sport, for selfies, for souvenirs. It's not for food. It's not out of self-defense. It's just killing animals for kicks. Now, that's all of the bad news. I've got some good news. The first bit of good news is that the public are behind us. They absolutely want a ban on trophy hunting. And we've been doing opinion polls for a number of years. We use different opinion poll firms as well, and the results are identical. This is the most recent one. So this was in February of this year, done by Survation, sample size 2050. So absolutely pucker opinion poll. And the question we asked, should the government ban people from bringing back trophies? 86% of people said yes, 2% of people said no. The rest were, don't know, just don't have an opinion either way. So 86 versus 2. What's really interesting, actually, was amongst Conservative Party voters, so people who voted Tory at the last election, the figures are actually stronger. So in that case, 92% of Conservative voters said, yes, there should be a ban straight away, and only 1% disagreed with that. So we absolutely have public opinion on our side. The media is on our side. I mean, I actually have genuinely lost count of the number of front page stories that we, the campaign to ban trophy hunting, have done. And this is obviously because the research that we've done, the investigations we've done, and so on. But the media is absolutely on side. I mean, I've been on BBC News, I've been on Sky News, I've been on Channel 4 News. I've even been on the Piers Morgan show on Good Morning Britain. In fact, I was on with a trophy hunter, and Piers Morgan decided to unleash himself on this trophy hunter and threatened to spear him live in the studio. So I didn't really have very much to say. I was the voice of reason, the quiet voice of moderation in the room at the time. But anyway, there is this coverage. But as well as the news, they've been giving editorial support. I mean, the Times newspaper has actually written 4 editorials in the last year and a half supporting our campaign. So this is a billboard that we took to Parliament. This is a Conservative member of Parliament for Blackpool South, I think it is, Scott Benton. And we have got the support of the whole strata of the media, with the possible exception of the Guardian, but also from politicians of every hue and stripe. And of course, public figures. I mean, Peter has been such a phenomenal advocate of this cause and for so many animal causes. But there's people who you might not expect to be supportive of animal rights and animal welfare issues who are on board. So the letter that this story in the Mail on Sunday, and by the way, the Mail on Sunday has been very, very supportive of our campaign. So the letter that this story is referring to, it had people like Michael Aspel, Shirley Bassey, Frank Bruno, Michael Caine, Hugh Grant, Tim Henman, Aled Jones, Felicity Kendall, Michael Parkinson, Cliff Richard, Philip Schofield. Anyway, the list goes on. Delia Smith. Look, as well as obviously long-standing supporters of the campaign, people like Judi Dench and Joanna Lumley. And, in large part, these are not the sort of people that you might expect to be associated with this kind of issue, with this kind of campaign, but they are. And their voice is being heard. And Sally Gunnell, actually, I just saw that, the British athlete, she's been tweeting furiously, supporting us earlier this evening. And, we've got this coalition of NGOs. So on the left, we can see Stephen Wiggin from one of our many, many, many NGO partners. He's from International Wildlife Bond. There's our very good friend Peter there, looking as handsome as ever inside Parliament. And of course, the late and, very sadly lamented David Amess, who, of course, was brutally murdered just a year ago. And he was one of our strongest supporters. This photo was actually taken outside Conservative Conference. We'd gone to Conservative Conference to talk to MPs, get them to show their support. Many of them did. David did. He was always doing it. He's recording videos. He put down motions in Parliament. This is an issue that genuinely has cross-party support. As Barbara mentioned in her introduction, it was in the manifesto of the Conservative Party, of the Labour Party, of the Lib Dems. This was in the Queen's speech of a Conservative government, etc. We have got that support. We've organised these events in Parliament. There we have the first father of the nation, Stanley Johnson. Here, Ranulph Fiennes has been there. Zach Goldsmith, government minister, has been there from the beginning. We've taken a petition with our partners to Downing Street with over 1 million signatories taken to the streets. People are very responsive and feel very strongly about this issue. And then yesterday afternoon, this happened. So last December, the government sort of came to me and said, look, we want to do this, but we can't find time to do it. We just haven't, our parliamentary schedule is all, completely blocked up. I said, well, look, take an existing private member's bill, and we've got one that's already in the pipeline, and just take it over, adopt it. You did that just now with the Liam Fox's bill to do with providing support for people with Down syndrome. You can do exactly the same. And they said, no, we don't want to do that. Well, yesterday they decided they are going to do it. So although it's not the absolute ideal scenario, we would have preferred a government bill in government time. This is a government bill. So yesterday, this ban, so it's called the Hunting Trophies Import Prohibition Bill. It was officially listed in the House of Commons. It got its first reading, in effect. And then in November, it comes back to Parliament for its so-called second reading. That's actually when you have the first proper debate. So we now have a date. It is in the parliamentary pipeline. This legislation is literally now on the map. It is going to happen, barring disaster. And of course, politics has been somewhat unpredictable over the last few months. But all things being equal, this is a bill that has government support, has opposition support, has backbench support, and it is in the timeline. It is going to come to Parliament. It is going to be voted on, and all things being equal, it's going to be implemented. And this will be the toughest ban on trophy imports of any country in the world. So currently, that prize is held by the Dutch. Their ban covers about 200 different species, certainly all of the most endangered animals. It's not a complete ban, but it's a pretty comprehensive ban. The British one would cover, in theory, up to 7,000 species. Now, that includes a lot of species that aren't and never have been trophy hunted, but it gives you an indication of just how comprehensive it is and how there's no real chance of a species suddenly creeping onto the list. It's almost a complete blanket ban. And this is Henry Smith himself, again with our good friend Peter, just a few weeks ago, or a few months ago, outside Parliament. And so look, this is going to happen. So I'm just going to conclude with two requests. The first is contact your MP. If you want this to happen, contact your MP. They are our representatives. Their job is to represent us. You know, it's like when we hire a plumber to do our plumbing because we're not expert plumbers, we haven't got the time to do it, so we buy them, we hire them, they get the job done. Similarly, we hire politicians, we pay for them, we pay their salaries, their bills through our taxes. They are there to represent us. So get in touch with them. Let them know that you feel strongly about this, that your vote is dependent on what they're going to do about this. Pick up the phone to them, write a letter, go and see them in their constituency surgeries. I would suggest not emailing them because they get so many emails, it's like white noise now, it's just junk. But somebody who has shown the dedication, the effort to write a letter, put it in an envelope, lick a stamp, put it through the letterbox, or has picked up the phone or wants to meet, has actually come to their constituency surgery, that has an impact. They listen to that, they think, oh, hang on, this is serious. This isn't just somebody signing any old petition or sending a cut out and keep a copy and paste email. No, this is somebody who actually feels very strongly and who's told me that actually my job is in the balance depending on what I do about this. I could lose my job at the next election if I don't do the right thing on this. And then lastly, please, if you can, support the campaign to ban trophy hunting. We are an unimaginably tiny organization. The trophy hunting industry, because we get this coverage and we've got the support in Parliament and the Times and all the rest of it, they think that we're this enormous organization rolling in cash. They could not be further from the truth. We are a tiny organization. This is a genuine battle of David versus Goliath, but we are winning. We're winning because we're pretty effective. We know what we're doing. There's a number of us, and Peter's great at networking and doing all of that stuff on social media. We've got a number of really good people who are working with us, and we work hard, we work smart. That's how we've got to where we are today. But we've won, if you like, the air war. We've managed to get the issue on the agenda. We got it into the manifestos. We got it into the Queen's speech. We've now got it coming to Parliament. But now's the ground war. And this is when the trophy hunting industry is going to throw everything in the kitchen sink. They're going to play by foul means and fouler means in order to try to wreck this bill. They will make up everything. They will smear people. I know, I was telling Barbara before we came on, they're actually trying to investigate my private life at the moment. And unfortunately, they're getting really bored because I'm really boring. So they're drawing a blank there. But that's what they're going to do. They're going to smear people. They're going to say that this is neo-colonialist, would you believe? And some people, unfortunately, are going to swallow it. So we need your help, your support, your dedication, your everything to try and make this ban happen. Because, and this is why actually the trophy hunting industry is so scared, this is the beginning of the end for trophy hunting. If Britain, the country which invented modern day trophy hunting and which exported it to the colonies, says, you know what, it is time to close this chapter in our history. And because of the links that Britain still has with many of those sub-Saharan African countries and so on, where this goes on, the impact of a British ban is going to be seismic. It is going to send ripple waves, a tsunami through the industry. And that's why they're terrified. And that's why we have to make this happen. So listen, thank you very much. I hope that's been a bit of a roller coaster. I've tried to give you as much information as possible in quite a compressed fashion. If you do want to get into a deep dive, and we don't cover it now in the questions and answers, I've written 4 books on the subject. So there's lots of information there. There's also a website. It's actually, we're actually relaunching it, I think, tomorrow night, because we're just putting a lot more resources and hopefully making it a much more user-friendly journey for people. So look, thank you again for giving me your time and listening to me, and I will do my very, very best now to answer your questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Eduardo. I mean, the amount of research and work you've done there has been absolutely incredible, and it's certainly been an eye-opener for me, and I'm sure for many of us. In terms of the numbers, has been, I found quite shocking, but just the whole nastiness of the industry. I mean, obviously killing the animals is nasty, but the way they fight their battles, everything's absolutely horrible. And you're up against big money, but then on the other hand, you've got the majority of people behind you. So there is hope. So I'd like to say on behalf of everyone at AIA and everybody here, just thank you so much for everything you're doing and for getting the bill put forward or put back into Parliament again. So thank you very much. I've got a number of questions. If anybody wants to ask any questions, please put them in the chat. And my chat box has just switched off. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are saying, "What can we do?" And I think, you know, you've said very much, you know, write to your MPs. A lot of people are thanking you for this this wonderful presentation, superb presentation, and wishing you every success. And one thing I wondered was, if we get a ban on imports, will that really stop the killing? Will people not carry on killing and just not import you know, their trophies? How much of an impact will that have?
That's a very good question. And I know some British trophy hunters are already saying, well, if there is a ban, they will probably carry on. But a lot of them won't, because this is what they live for. It's all about the bragging rights. Trophy hunting isn't about a skill or an art or anything. It's about showing off. It's showing off in a number of respects. A lot of it, psychologists have done some quite interesting research into the motivations and behaviors of trophy hunting. And they, you know, so costly signaling, showing off your prowess, your wealth, your power is something that is really important as part of the psychology of trophy hunters. So if they don't have the trophy to show off to their peers, to their friends, then there's no real point to it. But it is also about starting an international process, because I've already said to the government, they know what a nag I am. I've said, look, this isn't the end of the process, getting the ban implemented in Britain. This is the start of it, because what I want us to then do is to go out and actually show some international leadership, pull together our partners who are already on side, and we know that we've got other countries on side: India, Kenya, Costa Rica, Colombia. I mean, there's a number of them, in the Netherlands, and actually create an international, intergovernment campaign to end trophy hunting, because this is something that's got to be abolished. And that's actually the aim of this campaign, of my organization. It isn't just to stop the import of trophies, it's to see this off. It's to chuck this into the dustbin of history. It's to send it the same way as all of those other great moral evils that we've done, whether it's, you know, dogfighting or bear baiting, or indeed apartheid and slavery and so on. And I actually do foresee the day that we will have an international convention similar to the ones that we've had for landmines and other issues that does actually bring an end to trophy hunting. And we have to do it. We have to do it because it is cruel, it's barbaric, it's killing lots and lots of animals, but it's taking away the ability of already endangered species to be able to adapt and survive to this very rapidly changing environment and the rapidly heating planet that we live on.
And also, what does it do to human beings who, you know, are taught that this isn't a normal behavior? It's not, it's psychopathic behavior, and we've got to get that across.
Yeah, well, again, there's been some very interesting research by psychologists and indeed criminologists, and they have shown that there is a link between engaging in this type of behavior, so objectifying an animal and thinking it's okay to kill a sentient animal simply for entertainment, and then, of course, cruel and violent behavior towards people. You know, and so there's a greater propensity of trophy hunters to engage, for example, in domestic violence, to engage in sexual abuse of children. And also, there have been, I mean, case studies of trophy hunters who are serial killers as well, and vice versa. So there was one whose name escapes me now, but there was one famous trophy hunter and serial killer. He would stalk his human victims in the same way that he did his animal victims. So he would kidnap his female victim, stick her in the boot of his car, drive out into the woods, then get her out, strip her naked, and then say, run, and give her 5 minutes head start. And then with his gun, he would hunt this poor woman down and then catch her and kill her, and then take a body part off her. That was a trophy of the human, in the same way that he would take a trophy of the animals that he hunted in exactly the same way.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I've got some questions coming through. Somebody wants to know where to send funds to you to help the fight.
Well, once our website is up tomorrow, it will have our contact details. But alternatively, if you want to contact me directly via Barbara or some other way, because obviously you'll have had Barbara's email address to get the Zoom link for this, you can contact her and she can put you in touch with me, and we can do that directly. As I say, the website will be up, but probably the best thing if you want to, strike whilst the iron's hot, as it were, before you forget, drop a line to Barbara and we'll talk directly. So thank you for that, but we will appreciate your help.
Great. Okay. A question from Dr. Christina Nellis. Have you ever tried to get a member of the royal family on board? It may seem a trick question, but Charles and William played the environmental card.
It's a really good question, and it's a tricky one because, and this, you know what, shows up some of the, I don't know, the sort of illogic of sometimes people's attitudes when it comes to wildlife persecution. So people absolutely, when it comes to poaching and wildlife trafficking, totally against that. And we've seen the royals being involved in that. But then we've also seen pictures of the royals engaged in trophy hunting. And we know that, other members of the royal family in other countries as well. I mean, the King of Spain was a horrific trophy hunter, but they call themselves conservationists, which is really bizarre. But they say on the one hand, oh yes, poaching is terrible and so on. They don't understand, of course, that poaching or trafficking and trophy hunting is exactly the same thing. At least it is for the animal. The animal gets killed and a bit of the animal is taken for that person's use and not to the benefit of the animal. In some ways, and let me just preface this by saying, I am not in any way making a defense of poaching here, but it is slightly more logical to make the case for poaching because there is a direct human benefit from that, in that somebody will make some money. They will eat as a result of that. They will be able to send their child to school as a result of that. They will be able to have medical treatment as a result of killing an animal and selling its horns or whatever. That's not the case with trophy hunting. Nobody benefits. Absolutely nobody. Everyone loses, and certainly the wildlife.
Absolutely. Another comment from Christina is, she's talking of evil. St. Cyril of Jerusalem from the 4th century calls hunting an example of the pomp of the devil. Which well, thank you for that, Christina. I mean, is there a way that the members of the interfaith community can use their teachings to get some of these messages across, or are the people who are involved in this just so, their ears will be so closed it wouldn't help?
I would really like the faith community to get actively involved in this, and they haven't been, with some notable exceptions. And I'll give you one notable exception straight away, and that's actually Bishop John Arnold. He's the Bishop of Salford. He's Catholic. He's actually the Catholic Church's official spokesperson on the environment. So he has endorsed us and supported this campaign. So in effect, the campaign to ban trophy hunting has the official support of the Catholic Church in England and Wales, at least. And he has been a very vocal and active voice on this. Now, as in fact, there's a report going to be published in just a week and a half's time. And he's a contributor to that report. And he actually makes a very strong biblical and faith-based defense of why we should be campaigning, and certainly why hunting of this kind, trophy hunting, has absolutely no basis, certainly in the Christian tradition and probably in most faith traditions. But I know that Bishop John Arnold and I, we actually approached quite a few different faith leaders to see if they would get on board and support us in the campaign. And we mostly didn't get any responses. We got a couple of holding replies, and then we got one, oh, we think yes, and then they said, oh, actually no. So in fact, at the moment, the only faith group that, at least on paper, and I know that's not actually going to be the case, but at least on paper, the only faith group that is active and if you like, on the record on this issue is the Catholic Church. Now, and so even, the Quakers or the Jains or the Hindus, or etc., or Buddhists, they're not technically part of the campaign at the moment. And I think it would be really great, not least as that is another very important segment of society. That is, an influential community in public discourse, and we want them to be on board, and we certainly need them to be on board when the ground war starts in the autumn, the bill comes to Parliament, and the trophy hunting industry start throwing everything at this to try to block it.
I can see from the list of people who are here, we have at least one Quaker, we have some Jains, and the Jains are very good on these sort of things, and Pan-Orthodox Concern for Animals is here. So how would you like them to sort of contact you and be part of this and put it on their websites, and would that help?
Definitely, without a shadow of doubt. And you know, and I will stress that absolutely there are animal concern organizations and indeed faith groups that are already clear on this. And for example, the Friend magazine, which is the magazine of the Quakers, you know, they put me on their front cover. They've done reviews of my books, so there's no doubt that Quakers support this, and there will be many people of all faith traditions who absolutely hold to that. But what we need to do is, if you like, mobilize all of the faith groups and at the very highest level. And because, you know, one of the things that we have to realize is that the government will come under pressure when the bill comes to Parliament to drop it, to withdraw its support. You know, there have been so many times since we actually got the government to put this in the Queen's Speech on October the 14th, 2019. It's nearly 3 years later, and it's actually been in the Queen's Speech 4 times. I mean, I don't know of any other bill that's ever been in a Queen's Speech 4 times. And there have been several times when, you know, I'm told by my sources, oh, it looks it's going to be dropped. And I've spoken to people and it's like, and we've done a big sort of hoo-ha and it's back on again. But, you know, governments will go with the wind. You know, that's the way of politics. Whether we like it or not, doesn't matter. No point crying over spilt milk. That's the nature of the game. And so there will be points where the government will come under pressure, where people will be, you know, bombarding them with these idiotic campaigns saying it's neo-colonialist and great for conservation. And, you know, yes, those poor African skinners, they really like this, which of course is total baloney. But anyway, you know, they are going to be throwing this at them, and the government will probably, you know, waver. We have seen a lot of U-turns on different issues over the past few months, let alone years. So I don't need to go into that. So, but that's the nature of politics. You have pressure, people bend, they change, they maybe do U-turn, they get cold heels. So it is so important, so important, you know, to hold politicians to the fire. And one of the ways of doing that is through mobilizing the different faith traditions in Britain.
Right. Yeah, I just want to say that I think everything Eduardo has said is magnificent and absolutely on the money. Would it be a point, Eduardo, do you think, to focus on the politicians who seem to be aggressively hindering these motions coming, like, say, for instance, Jacob Rees-Mogg, as we're talking about interfaith, and he's very much a committed Catholic, he is somebody who is standing in the way of all of these animals aboard motions, isn't he? I mean, would it be advisable for the members of the public to focus on him, and also Mark Spencer and Lord Dunblane? It seems to me that there is a small clique of very influential and highly placed MPs who are working very hard to stop this going forward. And rather than just focusing on our local MPs, we should actually focus on them as well.
Well, you make the point very eloquently, because absolutely, when you have people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who absolutely wears his faith on his sleeve and makes a great point of justifying many of his, you know, policy positions because of his faith, then it is absolutely right and proper and effective for Catholic organizations in particular to be targeting him and saying, look, you know, where do you stand? Because, you know, certainly this isn't consistent with biblical teachings or with where our church, our faith stands on this particular issue. And sometimes, you know, actually through the medium of faith groups and faith traditions, that can be one of the most effective means of dialogue with politicians who otherwise, just if you're talking to them on the political level, you can't get through to them. But this is potentially a way to engage, and actually they have to respond, they have to justify, they have to think about it.
Yeah.
And maybe they can be persuaded. So absolutely.
Good. There's also another thought that came to my mind as you were speaking, Eduardo. that there is a UN mandate. Sorry, my dog's agreeing as ever. There's a UN mandate on the rights of the child, and that children shouldn't be exposed to cruelty. And that's been ratified, I think, by almost every nation, every country. Is there any strength in getting the UN involved with this?
I certainly think that there is a opportunity to use the law.
Yeah.
So absolutely, that is what that UN resolution says. And we know, for example, that the NRA and Safari Club International both run children's hunting camps. So summer camps where they get children in, they show them how to use a rifle, they show them how to use a knife, they get to a goodies bag at the end, which may include a knife, it may include the chance to then go on a duck hunt or a buffalo or a deer hunt or whatever. And surely that is abuse. And we know that a number of serious young offenders, whether it's here in the UK or in the US, if you like, their pattern of behavior started with them being engaged in violent behavior towards animals. I'm thinking, for example, of John Venables, who was the more influential of the pair that killed Jamie Bulger. I'm thinking of the boys who were the instigators of the Columbine High School massacre in the US. They were people who started, if you like, on their careers as animal abusers, and the list goes on. I mean, you've got the Boston Strangler, you've got Ian Brady, there's got Ian Soham, et cetera, et cetera. So absolutely right. But I do think we should use the law, and sometimes it can be used very effectively. About, 2 years ago, there was a young Colombian lawyer who, as part of her PhD, thought, I know, I'm going to draft a constitutional challenge to trophy hunting and submit it to the Constitutional Court of Colombia. And she wrote it. And in fact, the first time it was rejected because she hadn't got the terminology right. Then she went away, and then she came back. And one morning she picks up her phone. She's got 17 missed calls and her WhatsApp has gone crazy. And she's just, basically everyone is getting in touch, the media and everyone, because the Colombian Constitutional Court is about to announce that trophy hunting is unconstitutional and unlawful. So therefore, trophy hunting in Colombia is now illegal.
Wonderful.
And they were told they were given a year to shut down all of their operations. So used a lot. This was just a young law student, who's now Dr. Laura Santa Coloma. That was what she did, and we should be doing this. The law often works in our favor. We obviously have the example this week of how those poor refugees and asylum seekers who are going to be deported to Rwanda, and through the use of the law, the application of the law, that was hindered. And whether you agree with that, disagree with that, that is an example of how the law can be used. And I would say that there's a really big legal issue here, which is the following. We have this international convention, the Conventional International Trade in Endangered Species, CITES, which supposedly bans or severely restricts the trade in wildlife body parts, animal parts of endangered species in order to protect them. And yet there's this whacking great big loophole at the heart of the law, which says that, you can't shoot a rhino for its horn. That's terrible. Except if you're a trophy hunter. If you're a trophy hunter, you can shoot that exact same rhino. You can take that exact same horn, and we'll call it a personal and household effect. Therefore, it's exempt from CITES.
Why do they have that exemption?
The argument is that trophy hunting is non-commercial. So CITES is about commercial trade. Now, you could say, okay, when somebody shoots a rhino as a trophy hunter, they're not doing it primarily for personal profit. Although, having said that, you'll go to several auction houses and indeed shops and eBay and find quite a few people selling hunting trophies. But let's put that to one side. That's the argument. It's technically not, a commercial activity. But nobody is going to seriously be able to stand up the argument that trophy hunting is non-commercial. The amount of money in this industry, the companies that are literally making millions a year out of the suffering of animals to help people's egos. Of course it's an industry. Of course it's commercial.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, clearly CITES is the body that shouldn't be overseeing this, then, should they?
Well, yeah, there's two schools of argument. There's one that says, we should challenge CITES in the courts or amend CITES to close this loophole. And there's the other argument that says, well, CITES is never going to be the body to do this. What we actually need is an international conservation body, a true conservation body, because CITES, it's in the name. It's the international trade in endangered species. You're not going to abolish your business. So CITES is never going to reform itself, and it is, like the UN and other international bodies, the sum of its parts. It's what its members deem it to be. But clearly it is not doing wildlife a very good job if in many cases the number of trophies being taken is going up and species are going down. I mean, there was something like a third of all the rhinos that are shot at the moment are shot by so-called Chinese trophy hunters. Now, 10 years ago, there was no Chinese people shooting rhinos. None. What actually happened at the time was that there was this enormous, great big crime syndicate run out of Thailand and operating in Vietnam. They would stick these Vietnamese peasants and prostitutes on a plane, pay them $500 or $800, get them to go and shoot a rhino. And then actually they didn't even know how to shoot a rhino. So they sort of held it and the professional hunting guide would pull the trigger. And then they'd pose for the photo, sign a bit of paper saying it was a trophy, take that trophy home. Hey, bingo, you've got your trophy stroke trafficked bit of animal. It's been poached. And so, of course, the wildlife crime gangs they paid over a period of, I can't remember how many, about 4 years, they paid about $20 million to get all of these permits, but the value of the horns that they trafficked was $300 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Unbelievable. Going back to some of our questions, a number of people have asked, are we going to have a copy of this recording to put on our websites? Yes, you will get a copy, and please put it on your website, distribute it and get the information out there. So thank you for that. I've got a question here. What is the potential timeline for this newly introduced bill? If the second reading is in November, when could we realistically see this bill receive royal assent?
Really good question. And, how long's a piece of string? And of course, there's all the other things that are happening in government and in Parliament at the moment. I mean, there's even the possibility we might have a general election in the autumn, in which case we're back at square one. But taking your question at face value. So second reading, so first debate on the 25th of November. It's going to go to the EFRA Select Committee, so it's the Environment Committee of the House of Commons. It'll scrutinise, it's going to hold hearings. It'll go to the House of Lords, it'll then come back to the House of Commons. No doubt there'll be various amendments. We already know, actually, that the trophy hunting industry is preparing to try to submit an amendment which they call the Smart Ban amendment. Of course, there's nothing smart about allowing trophy hunting to go up. But anyway, what they've tried to argue is that there should be a so-called conservation benefit exemption. So if somebody pays some money which goes to a conservation pot of money, then that trophy hunting should be able to shoot that animal regardless of how endangered it is. Now, it's a bit like saying, right, I'm going to go next door, shoot my neighbour's cat, but I'm going to make a 20 quid donation to the RSPCA, and that's going to make it all okay. Now, that doesn't work in that way. That's not the way the law works. And of course, so anyway, that's one of the ways they're going to try and sabotage it, and I'm sure there'll be other things as well. But it will be a passage through both houses of Parliament that will take several months, and then hopefully we will get to the final bill. It'll be hopefully voted on, and then we might see a further delay in terms of implementation, because we saw how long it took for the Ivory Act to be finally enacted and be given its royal assent, etc. So, we don't know quite what the future holds. I do actually have some meetings with ministers and civil servants coming up in the next couple of weeks. So I might know what the plan for the timetable is, which isn't the same as saying what will happen in reality, but at least in a couple of weeks' time, this was only announced yesterday, so we're still very early days, but in the next couple of weeks, it's certainly going to become clearer what the timeline is likely to be. So if you ask me that question in a couple of weeks' time, I might have a better answer, but certainly it's going to take some months. Let's hope it takes as quickly as possible, though, because seriously, the world's wildlife needs it.
Great, thank you. A question from Richard Bissett. A lot of the tactics of the trophy hunting industry seem very similar to the fur trade, such as self-branding themselves as sustainable, making accusations of racism and funding scientists. This can't be a coincidence. Are you aware of other industries, particularly those responsible for animal cruelty, deliberately adopting similar tactics?
Great question, and the answer is definitely. I don't know specifically in relation to animal issues, but I absolutely, hand on heart, know in relation to, for example, the fossil fuel industry and indeed the tobacco industry before it. And in fact, what we're seeing, the strategy which the industry is using, it's straight out of the playbook that's used by, tobacco years ago. So first of all, the first stage is to try to sow the seeds of doubt into the minds of the jury, public opinion, that there isn't a link between A and B. So in the case of tobacco, there isn't a link between smoking and lung cancer. In terms of oil, no link between climate or human-induced climate emissions and climate change. And in this case, that there's no real link between trophy hunting and the terrible situation that these wild animals are in. So that's the first thing. And then yes, they co-opt scientists to try to put a respectable face on their propaganda, and they use some extraordinary propaganda. So for example, back in a long time ago, the tobacco industry used to put TV adverts with doctors saying, oh, this is a good brand of cigarette. And of course, we've had propaganda from the fossil fuel sector that used to literally claim that global warming is good for us. It's going to green the planet. All of this extra CO2 in the atmosphere is going to make everything more lush and plentiful. And then you use these, rogue scientists or whatever you want to call them. So just a few months ago, for example, there was a group of about 500 so-called climate scientists who penned a letter to the UN Secretary General saying that wasn't really a climate crisis, that carbon emissions weren't that important, certainly wasn't driving climate change, etc., etc., etc. And you're seeing the same tactics again now. There was a letter in a scientific journal a while back, supposedly signed by 125 scientists. Well, it turns out actually majority of them were lobbyists, and we knew that. They weren't scientists at all. But even those who were the scientists, it turns out they were sponsored. They received sponsorship money from the trophy hunting industry. And originally it was reported by the BBC that scientists were saying this. Then when we pointed out that they were taking money from SCI and DSC and all the rest of it, they all started printing corrections and clarifications and so on. And this isn't a coincidence, because you've got the same lobbyists working in one and working in the other and working in the other. So there's actually a firm, for example, on Capitol Hill in the US in Washington, D.C. called Crossroads Strategies, which represents a lot of these big corporate interests. They represent the trophy hunting industry. They represent the fossil fuel sector. And so it's the same people using the same tactics for one, and then they use it for another. And as I say, it's like a playbook. It's the American expression for American football, isn't it? But it's their strategy document. There's a template. That's an English expression, isn't it? It's a template. They use this tactic, this game plan for all of these destructive industries that are on the defensive, that are under threat, their interests are under threat. So it is no coincidence, and there's proof of that, absolutely.
Great, okay. I think I've gone through all the questions that have come up. I don't know if anybody else wants to ask anything else. I don't know if there's anything that you would want to add, Eduardo or Peter.
Well, I'll go first, and then I will bow to Peter to conclude. But we are literally at a historic moment. Okay, 3-4 years ago, this wasn't on the horizon. This wasn't on the radar. This wasn't on anyone's maps. Nobody was talking about trophy hunting. Nobody was doing a campaign on it. Nobody had put it in as a manifesto commitment. Nobody was really reporting about it, except, occasionally when something like Cecil came along. But it was once in a blue moon. You'd have this big burst of publicity. There'd be all this stuff on social media. Then it would go away and business as usual. There has never been a serious threat to trophy hunting itself until today. Now, well, until yesterday, perhaps. Now, there is a real possibility that trophy hunting could be made illegal. It could go the same way as all of these other great social moral evils. And what a huge opportunity that is. We should grasp this with open hands, because I certainly hope that if people understand why this is so wrong and why we have to act, then perhaps it gives us an insight into actually all of these other bigger challenges that we have to get to grips with and that we have to act upon. It's all about our relationship with the natural world. It's all about our place as humans on the earth, the fact that we see ourselves as above it rather than part of an ecosystem, that every single living sentient creature on earth, in my view, has an equal right to life, an equal right to survive, an equal right to thrive. And if we actually understand that basic concept, then we're actually going to be able to challenge properly, fully, the big issues, whether it's climate change, whether it's biodiversity, whether it's waste, whether it's microplastics. It's all comes down to this one common theme about our attitudes, our dominionistic attitude. That's fundamentally what this is about people giving themselves the right to kill an animal for kicks, for their own pleasure, for their own entertainment. Well, that horrible, empty objectification is, in my humble view, the root cause of so many of the problems and evils that we face today. And it probably extends to the way we treat other people as well. So let's grasp this, please. Let's grasp this with both hands and make it happen, because I do see this as a game changer. I see this as a world changer. So let's do it. Let's make this ban happen.
I fully agree, and thank you so much for leading us through this. We just can't, honestly, if you hadn't done all this work, I don't know who would have done it, so thank you so much. And we will be sending the recording out, so please do share it and get this information out and help to make this ban happen. Okay, thank you so much. Stop recording now, Andre.
Mm-hmm.